"He doesn't look hungry anymore, Mama," little Lily whispered, her nose pressed against the cracked window pane. The sound of the idling Maybach engine was deafening on their dilapidated street. Just 5 days ago, this same old man, now stepping out in a tailored suit, had been shivering on a park bench, accepting half of Maya's last peanut butter sandwich. Now he stood there, a terrifying authority emanating from him, holding an expensive briefcase. He didn't come to thank her. He came for something else entirely, and the raw fear tightening in Maya's chest confirmed this was not a miracle, but a complication. Elias Thorne stepped out of the black sedan with the practiced ease of a man who owned the asphalt beneath his expensive Italian leather shoes. The humid air of the forgotten neighborhood barely touched him. He was shielded by an invisible boundary of wealth and influence. His routine was clockwork. 5:00 a.m., private gym in his penthouse. 6:30 a.m., strategic review of global markets. 8:00 a.m., the first of a dozen high-stakes calls. Today, however, the schedule had been abruptly and violently interrupted by a return to this street, a place he never thought he would see again. Elias was the CEO of Thorne Industries, a conglomerate that built cities and moved mountains of capital. His public image was impenetrable, sharp, ruthless, a visionary genius who never looked back. Authority was simply the air he breathed. When Elias spoke, markets reacted and people jumped. Yet behind the sapphire gleam of his eyes, a perpetual fatigue lingered. He carried the weight of a monumental, silent grief that even his billions couldn't incinerate. 2 years ago, his only daughter, Clara, a vibrant artist with a revolutionary spirit, had been involved in an accident that cost her life. The official report cited driver fatigue, an unavoidable tragedy. Elias, the master of control, had lost the one person he couldn't protect. He had poured his life into work, transforming grief into brutal efficiency, ensuring his dominance was absolute. But every night, when the penthouse was silent, the hollow echo of her laughter haunted him. He kept Clara's small worn leather journal hidden beneath the mahogany desk in his office, never daring to open it again, terrified of confronting the last words she might have written. The driver, a discreet man named Miller, cleared his throat, pulling Elias from the edge of the emotional abyss. "Mr. Thorne, everything is secured. Are you proceeding with the original plan, sir?" Elias adjusted his tie, the fabric crisp and suffocating. The original plan was simple: acquire the property, remove the squatters, and proceed with the high-rise development, erasing this slum from the city map. But the plan had been complicated by a single peanut butter sandwich and the memory of a brief, agonizing moment of genuine kindness shown to the homeless man he had briefly pretended to be as part of a highly unorthodox corporate security test. That sandwich was the first untainted warmth he had felt since Clara's passing. It was a memory that now mocked the sterile coldness of his power. He gave Miller a curt nod. The acquisition was still the goal, but the method had changed. He wasn't just here to buy land. He was here to test the moral fiber of the woman who had shared her last meal. Maya felt the cheap aluminum handle of the mop digging into her palm. She was the definition of invisible in the high-rise office park across town, cleaning restrooms and wiping down the glass facades of businesses that would never know her name. Her shift had started before the sunrise and ended long after the traffic peaked, a relentless cycle driven by absolute necessity. Her uniform was always clean, but the deep exhaustion in her shoulders was a constant, heavy companion. At 32, life had already asked too much of her, demanding resilience where she only had spare energy. Her limitations were stark: a mountain of medical debt from an emergency surgery, a perpetually leaking roof on the small rental house, and the gnawing worry that she wasn't providing enough. But she had Lily. Lily, 7 years old, a whirlwind of bright curiosity and unwavering faith, was the center of Maya's universe. Lily was the reason Maya pushed through the pain of 3 jobs, the reason she sometimes ate only the scraps of Lily's leftover dinner. Maya protected Lily from the despair of their circumstances with fierce, quiet dedication, creating a bubble of warmth in their shabby home. The day she met the old man in the park, Maya had been sitting alone, budgeting the last $7 she had for the week. He looked utterly broken, frail, shivering, despite the mild autumn sun. Lily had been at school, and the sandwich Maya pulled from her worn canvas bag was meant to be her lunch and dinner. Without a second thought, she broke it in half and offered the better piece. The old man hadn't spoken much, just thanked her with eyes that held an unnerving depth of sadness, not hunger. Now, seeing that same man, Elias Thorne, standing on her overgrown lawn next to a $500 vehicle, Maya's mind raced. It wasn't just the change in clothes, it was the way he looked at the old, dying oak tree in her yard, the one with the strange carving at the base, a delicate, almost forgotten symbol. She knew this house was part of the land acquisition. She had received the eviction notices. But she had recently discovered something crucial that the development company, Thorne Industries, clearly hadn't accounted for. Hidden in the dusty county archives, while searching for an unrelated property deed, Maya had stumbled across an ancient, forgotten easement, a protected status tied directly to the old oak tree and the land immediately surrounding it, a tiny historical footnote that could stop the entire project. She hadn't yet fully understood the implications, but the memory of the sandwich, the kindness she showed, was now a ticking clock against the immense power standing at her door. He was rich, yes, but he also recognized her. And she, the janitor, the invisible mother, knew a legal secret that could derail his multi-million-dollar venture. If you are watching this story unfold, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. The distance between Elias Thorne and Maya was only 20 feet, yet it felt like the chasm between two separate planets. Elias stood rigid, observing the dilapidated porch swing and the faded paint of the rental house. He was here to make an offer, an overwhelmingly generous one, to secure the land and ensure Maya's silence regarding the security test moment. He had expected greed, confusion, perhaps even an attempt at blackmail. He had not expected the cold knot of guilt that tightened his stomach as he recognized the tiny hand-stitched patch on Lily's backpack, visible through the cracked window. Maya cautiously opened the screen door, gripping the worn brass handle so tightly her knuckles turned white. She saw Elias Thorne not as the CEO, but as the man she had fed, and the contradiction was nauseating. His transformation from a seemingly destitute figure to a titan of industry was a brutal lesson in how easily wealth could masquerade and manipulate. Her eyes moved from his perfectly tailored suit down to his highly polished shoes, then settled on the briefcase. It wasn't money she feared. It was the sudden, total loss of control. "Mr. Thorne," Maya said, her voice dry but steady. She skipped the polite introductions. "I believe you are here about the house." Elias registered the immediate lack of surprise, the steel beneath her weariness. "Ms. Reyes, I appreciate you taking the time. Yes, this land is crucial for our new development. I'm prepared to offer significantly above market value for immediate acquisition, more than enough to secure a better future for you and your daughter." He kept his tone neutral, professional, attempting to bury the memory of the shared sandwich beneath layers of corporate formality. Maya stepped onto the porch, blocking the view of the living room where Lily was coloring silently. The air crackled thick with unsaid things. She didn't reject the offer immediately. She merely assessed him. She noticed his eyes kept flicking toward the massive oak tree, the one the engineers had marked with a bright orange X for demolition. There was a moment of deep, uncontrolled focus in his gaze when he looked at the tree, something beyond mere real estate interest. It was a fleeting, personal attention that struck Maya as oddly familiar. It reminded her of the intense, almost sorrowful way he had looked at the sandwich before taking a bite. That small moment of distraction gave Maya a sliver of confidence. He wasn't entirely a machine. There was a crack in the armor, and she pressed on it softly. "The value isn't just in the land, Mr. Thorne, it's the stability. Where I go, Lily goes. And she loves this tree." She watched his reaction closely. The mention of Lily seemed to visibly jar him, pulling his focus entirely from the oak. Elias blinked, the professional mask wavering. Something had shifted in the dynamic, an acknowledgement of her humanity that he hadn't intended to give. Maya realized with a chill that the massive weight of his power was about to fall, and she had only a single fragile secret to hold against it. Something was definitely about to spiral out of control. Elias Thorne's offer was astronomical, a figure that would wipe Maya's debt and secure Lily's education through university. The number hung in the air, a gravitational force pulling her towards comfort and away from risk. Most people would have snatched it, signing the papers before the ink dried. But Maya held back. The strange detail she had noticed at the county archives burning in her mind, amplified now by Elias's peculiar behavior. During their brief, tense discussion, Elias had insisted on the immediate closure of the deal, citing project deadlines. However, the one thing he didn't discuss was the structure of the house itself. He didn't send engineers or request a walkthrough. His entire focus was the perimeter of the lot, specifically the ancient oak. When Maya mentioned the demolition permits, Elias went unnecessarily rigid. He spoke of the tree only as a logistical necessity, yet his body language screamed otherwise. A few days later, Maya was back at the county office pretending to research zoning laws for a fictional neighbor. She located the old property map again, the one detailing the specific forgotten land use agreement dating back nearly a century. This agreement stated that the land, specifically the area surrounding the ancient oak, was designated as a protected cultural marker due to its association with a historical figure's final resting place, a designation that had somehow been overlooked or deliberately omitted in modern municipal records. The carving she had seen on the trunk was not a child's doodle, it was the faded outline of a family crest. But there was another detail, a terrifying incoherence that slammed into her with the force of a punch. The historical figure wasn't just anyone. It was a distant relative of the Thorne family, who had mysteriously lost their life on the property, and the family crest on the tree was identical to a faded logo she had once briefly seen imprinted on a stack of old files in Elias Thorne's corporate office when she was cleaning late one night. The danger was instantly magnified. Elias wasn't just acquiring land. He was buying silence and erasure. He wanted the secret buried with the oak tree. The thought terrified her. If she revealed the protected status, she lost the payoff and risked the fury of one of the city's most powerful men. She could secure her life forever by taking the money, letting the tree fall and suppressing the truth. But the weight of that moral compromise felt heavier than all her financial burdens combined. If she acted, she risked not only her future but Lily's safety. She paced her tiny kitchen floor late into the night, the printed copy of the ancient easement clutched in her trembling hand. She felt the icy grip of fear, the doubt gnawing at her resolve. Everyone else, the city planners, the legal teams, the entire powerful corporation, had ignored this sign. Only the woman with nothing left to lose had seen it, and now she had to decide whether to trade her dignity for survival. The deadline Elias set for the acquisition was brutally fast, 48 hours. Maya knew he was pressuring her, attempting to stifle any opportunity for external consultation or independent verification. She looked at the check sitting on her chipped kitchen table, enough money to buy a small, safe life, and then at Lily, asleep with a half-finished coloring book clutched to her chest. The memory of Elias, the hungry, humbled man on the park bench, clashed violently with the calculating billionaire now trying to bulldoze history. The kindness she had offered was being met with coercion. Maya made her decision not out of altruism, but out of a deep, resonant refusal to be manipulated. If Elias Thorne could erase history and break laws so casually, what else was he capable of? She could not build Lily's future on a foundation of complicity. Instead of calling Elias's corporate lawyer, Maya drove to the local, independent newspaper office, a place notorious for struggling financially, but possessing an old-school editor known for his integrity. She walked into the cluttered newsroom, feeling utterly exposed, holding the copies of the ancient easement and the photograph of the family crest on the oak tree. The editor, a man named George, looked at her with polite skepticism, his gaze dismissive until he saw the documents. "This documentation is from 1937, Mum. Are you sure this hasn't been superseded?" George asked, his voice low. "It hasn't. I checked the continuity registry. It's dormant but legally binding," Maya insisted, pushing the papers across the desk. "This protects the land around the oak, not just the tree. It's a burial site. And the family crest connects it directly to Thorne Industries' founder." George's face, initially bored, hardened into focus. The smell of old coffee and fear filled the small room. "If this is accurate, Ms. Reyes, This isn't just a property dispute. This is a massive legal and historical scandal. Thorn Industries would stop at nothing to bury this, especially if it points to something illegal in their past. Maya felt the icy terror bloom in her chest. She had spoken the truth, and now the risk was immediate and profound. I know. They offered me enough money to never work again, just to sign the papers silently. George looked at the massive check Maya had brought as proof, then back at her weary, determined eyes. You turned this down, knowing what Thorn is capable of. I couldn't, Maya whispered, the word catching in her throat. She left the copies with George, making him promise to file the information officially if she failed to call him back by morning. As she drove home, she saw a sleek, unmarked black SUV parked 2 blocks from her house, idling in the evening shadows. The silence was heavy, threatening. She knew the moment George started investigating, the powerful machine of Elias Thorn would rumble to life. The story had officially changed direction from a transaction into a battle. Elias Thorn was in the middle of a video conference with his London finance team, discussing a delicate bond transfer, when his chief legal counsel, David, slammed the secure office door open, a grave breach of protocol. David's face was ash-gray, holding a printed copy of a decades-old property deed, the easement Maya Reyes had brought back to life. Thorn, you need to see this now. The Reyes woman didn't take the buyout. She went to the press, specifically George at the City Independent. David hissed, his voice trembling with suppressed panic. And worse, she's right. The easement is real. It's protected land, a burial ground. Elias's calculated composure shattered. He ended the conference with a wave of his hand, his eyes locking onto the document. The date, 1937, jumped out at him, along with the detailed description of the protected cultural marker, the family crest. This was not a minor land dispute. This was the buried secret of the Thorn legacy. The reason his grandfather had sold that specific parcel of land decades ago at a suspiciously low price, ensuring the records went dormant. Why wasn't this flagged? I hired 5 teams to clear the legal history of that lot, Elias roared, the sound echoing off the polished glass walls. It was deliberately archived under obscure cultural statutes, not zoning laws. It took Ms. Reyes, apparently doing deep personal research, to find it. And the press is now calling. They know the connection to your great-uncle, the one who disappeared, David said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, mentioning the family shame that Elias had spent his life trying to outrun. Elias walked to the window, staring down at the city he controlled, suddenly feeling the earth shift beneath his feet. The initial plan, an effortless acquisition, had blown up into a massive threat to his entire corporate reputation. If the press exposed the historical cover-up, it would lead to legal investigations, massive fines, and the potential halt of all his current projects due to moral corruption clauses. But the urgency wasn't just corporate. The memory of his father's distant coldness, always tied to that missing great-uncle, surged through him. Elias realized that the disappearance wasn't just a historical footnote. It was the foundation of his family's fractured emotional life. The little oak tree wasn't just stopping his construction, it was holding the key to a traumatic family secret. Call George at the Independent. Offer him a blackout, an exclusive multi-million-dollar advertising contract, anything to buy time, Elias commanded, his mind racing. And get a full security detail on Reyes, not to silence her, David, to protect her. If she has the truth, we need to know who else might be interested in keeping that past buried permanently. The game had officially escalated from a corporate maneuver to a matter of life and death urgency. Elias had to find out exactly what Maya knew before the darkness that had haunted his family for generations reached out to silence the janitor. The confrontation happened not in a boardroom, but in the sterile quiet of Elias Thorn's penthouse library, hours after Maya was pulled from her home by Elias's security team and brought there under the pretense of negotiations. The setting was deliberately intimidating, a vast chamber of unread first editions, but Maya stood her ground, exhausted but fiercely focused. Why are you protecting that tree, Ms. Reyes? What is the real price? Elias demanded, pacing the Persian rug. He hadn't offered her money this time, just a request for the truth. Maya placed the printout of the 1937 document on the glass table. "The price is simple, Mr. Thorne. It's the truth about your great-uncle, Julian. It's what your family paid to silence the incident." Elias stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing. "Incident? He ran away. He was a rogue inventor, emotionally unstable. It was deemed an absence." "No," Maya countered, her voice ringing with the authority of verified research. "Julian Thorne didn't run. He was fighting your grandfather over the rights to a revolutionary clean energy patent, a patent that would have destabilized your family's fossil fuel holdings instantly. The records show he was last seen arguing with your grandfather at that specific site, by the oak. The original police report, suppressed shortly after, indicated a struggle and then nothing." She slid a second piece of paper across the table, a microscopic entry found in Julian's medical records, a recent metal implant in his hip. "Your engineers were going to excavate the site. They would have found it. The easement was designed to protect the area as a cultural marker, a silent, legal way to ensure Julian's remains and the truth were never disturbed." Elias stared at the papers, then at Maya. The controlled grief he felt for Clara suddenly merged with the historical tragedy of his great-uncle. His father had always maintained a strange, deep loyalty to the family business, coupled with an insurmountable wall of silence about the past. Elias realized the wealth he inherited was not just built on business acumen, but on a family crime. "My father," Elias murmured, the realization hitting him like physical blow. He knew, all those years of silence, the coldness, he was protecting the legacy of a killer. Maya pushed her final proof forward, a small, faded photograph found taped inside the archival documents, showing Julian Thorne standing proudly next to the oak tree. In his hand, he held a simple engraved silver locket. "Julian was rumored to be seeing a woman from the poor neighborhood, the one your grandfather despised. She fought to protect the grave. She was my great-grandmother. That locket is buried there, Mr. Thorne, with him." The revelation was a full emotional collapse. Elias hadn't just been testing her morality in the park. He had been reaching for a simple human connection, the very thing his family had crushed for generations. The powerful CEO was suddenly just a man, stripped bare by the innocent courage of a janitor who sought dignity over dollars. The immense century-long lie had finally fallen. The fallout was instantaneous and explosive. George, the editor, armed with Maya's proof and now backed by Elias Thorne's own unexpected cooperation, ran the story globally. Thorne Industries CEO reveals family. Cover-up, century-old homicide concealed beneath development site. The headline was devastating. Elias Thorne faced the consequences with a grim determination that shocked the financial world. He called an immediate, public press conference not to deny but to confirm the findings. He didn't spare his grandfather's memory, publicly acknowledging the ethical and criminal rot at the foundation of the Thorne empire. The admission led to a torrent of investigations. Stock prices plummeted, erasing billions from Thorne Industries' valuation in days. Major alliances collapsed, unwilling to withstand the public scrutiny of working with a corporation built on historical injustice. David, the legal counsel, was overwhelmed, forced to spend every hour dealing with litigation and divestment. Elias did not resign, but he lost his impenetrable status. He became the CEO who willingly dismantled his own dynasty for the sake of truth. His father, now elderly and frail, was interrogated, but provided only vague, terrified denials, retreating entirely into silence. The loss of his corporate reputation was absolute, a price paid for the restoration of a great-uncle's name. For Maya, the consequences were complex. She lost the massive payout that would have guaranteed her future. The local development project was immediately halted, and the rental house, now classified as a historically sensitive property, was indefinitely frozen in legal limbo. She was hailed as a local hero, the brave mother who stood up to the billionaire, but praise did not pay the overdue rent. She still had to work 3 jobs, still worried about Lily's school fees, still felt the gnawing exhaustion. The truth had delivered dignity, but not comfort. The highest price was paid in the emotional currency of the powerful. Elias felt a profound separation from the only life he had ever known. The sterile coldness of his penthouse became a suffocating reminder of his isolation. Yet, beneath the professional ruin, a fragile, agonizing lightness began to surface. By forcing the truth, Maya had unexpectedly given Elias the chance to grieve not only for the injustice done to his great-uncle, but for the moral emptiness that had consumed his own father and that had almost consumed him. He visited the oak tree daily, now marked by police tape and surrounded by respectful silence, not bulldozers. He carried Clara's journal with him, finally feeling ready to open it. The silence was heavy, but no longer tainted by lies. Months later, the land around the oak tree, officially designated as a protected burial site and memorial, was undergoing a quiet transformation. Elias Thorne, having divested significant portions of Thorne Industries and dedicating his personal funds to remediation, had established the Julian Thorne Foundation for Ethical Innovation, a non-profit aimed at supporting clean energy patents, exactly the legacy his great-uncle had fought for. Elias still maintained a position at the company, but his focus had fundamentally shifted from ruthless acquisition to moral repair. One afternoon, Maya returned home from her second cleaning shift to find Elias waiting not in a limo, but sitting on her porch swing, sketching quietly in a small notebook. He was wearing casual clothes, his shoulders less stiff, the lines of worry still etched, but softer. He no longer projected overwhelming power, but quiet resilience. "The Foundation's first initiative is launching a scholarship fund," Elias said without preamble, handing her a folder. "Full merit-based tuition for children from the local neighborhood, starting with Lily." Maya opened the folder. The terms were clear, generous, and absolutely ironclad, tied to the non-profit's mandate, completely untainted by the acquisition attempt. It was not a bribe, it was an investment in dignity. "Mr. Thorne, you didn't have to do this," she whispered, tears blurring the text. "Yes, I did, Maya," he corrected gently, using her first name for the first time. "You gave me something far more valuable than the land, or the money. You gave me back my family's lost conscience. You taught me the true meaning of poverty and wealth that day in the park. My billions couldn't buy me peace, but your peanut butter sandwich bought me the truth." He paused, looking toward the old oak where Julian Thorne's simple monument now stood, the locket having been recovered and placed inside the memorial stone. "Clara, my daughter. She cared deeply about justice. If she were alive, she would have admired your courage. You didn't just save a historical site, you saved a man." Maya nodded, the weight of the last few months finally lifting. She still lived in the same rental house, still worked, but her life was no longer defined by fear. She had proven to Lily that truth, even when terrifying, always leads to light. The house was hers now, secured by the historical status, and the little family had found stability not in wealth, but in restored honor. Elias stood up, ready to leave, but paused. He handed her the notebook. It was filled with sketches of the oak tree and its surroundings, rendered with surprising artistic talent, a shared interest he had discovered he had with his late daughter. "Take care, Maya, and tell Lily to keep drawing," Elias said, a faint, genuine smile touching his lips. He walked away, not towards a waiting limousine, but towards a regular, rented sedan driven by a security detail now focused on philanthropy and protection. The paths of the janitor and the billionaire had diverged again, but the invisible, unbreakable bond of shared truth connected them forever. Maya watched him go, feeling the quiet, potent hope of a new beginning. She knew that some of the greatest battles are fought not with armies, but with a single act of radical honesty. If you enjoyed this powerful story about courage, truth, and transformation, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts on Maya's brave decision, and subscribe to Moonlight Stories for more cinematic tales like this one.